I'm going to talk a little bit about a publication we put together called Nudge, Think, Shove. Today we're faced with problems that are very different from the problems we faced earlier. In the past, a lot of the problems that we faced in environment and many other areas were ones that government had a lot of control over. It was a matter of banning toxic chemicals, and really actually the behavior of the public didn't matter quite so much. But one of the key problems with climate change is that it is a co-produced problem. It is not within the power of government to solve it on its own. Unless people change their behavior, government has very limited things they can do. So I'm going to look at three approaches to changing behavior in the way of changing behavior that the governments in various parts of the world are looking at the moment. And those three are nudge, think, and shove. So nudge being things like social marketing, things where you try and trick people into changing their behavior, simply because we're social animals and we react in a certain way to certain stimulus. That's been very popular. A lot of people have been really excited by the book Nudge by Richard Thaler and a number of other things. You've also got Think, which is around deliberation, so actually getting people to engage with the issues, understand the trade-offs, and talk to other people. And then you've got Shove, which is your typical regulation, tell people what you want them to do. And if you look at Nudge, there's reasons why people are excited about it. They've shown that, for example, if you put smiley faces on people's recycling boxes, if they recycle, that increases recycling. If you get people to pledge and perhaps put a note in their window saying, I've switched to green electricity, that has an impact in people's willingness to do things. The little steps that actually can have a disproportionate effect, just changing the defaults. So on the forms, is carbon offsetting the default, or is it something you have to tick? That shift can make a big difference. So the great thing about it is it goes with the grain of human nature. It's small things, it's subconscious, doesn't take a lot of effort. However, you don't actually change people's values. So it's very limited in what you can actually force or trick people into changing, because if your values are strongly against it, you won't do it. And it works best on small changes, and those changes won't add up on their own to the massive reductions in carbon, to a complete carbon neutrality, for example. Think, deliberation, means actually, instead of trying to sort of change people's behaviors without them realizing it, you say, these are the problems, these are the trade-offs. You don't treat people as children, you treat them as adults. These are the things we have to consider. What do you think? And forcing them to listen to other people's perspectives and maybe challenge their own. Research has shown that does change attitudes. People are all of a sudden having to look at the bigger picture, they're sharing information, they're realizing that it's not just a matter of recycling, it's not just a matter of switching to wind power. It's a very complex issue that needs lots of different things to come together at once. And it can build ownership over those changes, because you've engaged in a conversation, you feel that's something that I care about, that's something I'm going to take action on. It's resource intensive, and it does require careful management. You need to make sure that the information you provide people is accurate, it's balanced, and that people don't feel that the process isn't manipulative, and that people don't feel that it is manipulative. And then, of course, you've got the shove, the regulatory bit. And actually, this often underpins other change. So in the UK, for example, we put energy rating on fridges, and that's an example of nudge. It's a small thing, and it's, you're giving more information that should change people's understanding. However, it wasn't until there was a legal requirement for producers to provide cheaper A-graded electronics and fridges that took off. But of course, it's very limited at the moment what you can do with regulation. It's very unpopular, it's hard to pass through parliaments, and also it's quite easy for companies and individuals to subvert if they don't like the system. So those are the three options you have. And I'd say that we actually need to look at those as part of an ecology, different options for different situations. I think deliberation is one of the often overlooked ones. First of all, there's a reason why I think this shouldn't just be government's job. We need to do it need to get other people involved, get community groups and charities doing deliberation as well. Firstly, it lowers the costs because other groups can bring in-kind support. Secondly, because it ties in with existing motivations. Groups can, we're talking to people like the Scouts and Women's Institute in the UK, those groups can bring in people with different motivations than government can access. And of course, there's an increased trust working with other organizations. Some people don't trust government, they may trust others to do it for them. Finally, a lot of people working in municipalities can appreciate this guy's challenge. Why deliberation? Why not all these other consultation engagement activities, which are good and they add things to it that we saw earlier that Jim talked about? Well, I think deliberation gives us three things. It gives us better knowledge about not just what people think in themselves, but what does society as a whole, what do people as a whole in a group setting, when they think about it and talk about it, what do they think? That knowledge is often missing. It builds relationships. It can help people overcome mistrust. It can help both towards government, but also within community settings and within and amongst themselves in neighborhoods. And it also makes things possible. It makes reforms and new things possible that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Final quote, and this is attributed to Ben Franklin by some and to a Chinese proverb by others, but this is why I think deliberation is important. Unless people really understand and own knowledge, they won't actually change their behavior. That's what I've got to say. Thank you very much. And if anyone wants to talk about something further, come to me later.